What if one of the biggest dangers facing people over 65 in their health, their finances, or even loneliness but the wrong relationship? And what if the warning signs appear years before the damage becomes visible? Most people believe that, by the time they reach their 70s, they have enough life experience to recognize a bad partner immediately. It sounds logical. After all, you've lived through decades of relationships, challenges, disappointments, and lessons. But research tells a different story. In fact, some of the very changes that come with aging can make certain red flags harder to spot and easier to excuse. The most surprising part, the men who cause the greatest regret rarely look dangerous in the beginning. They often seem caring. They often seem confident. They often say exactly what you want to hear. And that's where our story begins. To understand why so many older women find themselves trapped in unhealthy relationships later in life, we have to go back to early adulthood. Decades ago, relationship expectations were very different in America. Many women were taught to prioritize commitment over compatibility, stability over emotional health, endurance over boundaries. At first, those values appeared harmless, but hidden beneath them was a pattern that researchers would later identify again and again. Small warning signs were often ignored because people believed love required sacrifice. That belief created a chain reaction. The first red flag begins here. Never accept a man who constantly dismisses your feelings. Notice that we're not talking about disagreements. We're talking about dismissal. When someone repeatedly tells you that you're overreacting, too sensitive, or imagining problems, something dangerous begins to happen. Psychologists have long observed that emotional invalidation slowly erodes confidence and self-trust. But most people don't recognize the damage immediately. The effect builds quietly over years. And that brings us to the next stage of the timeline, the 40s. This is when many relationship habits become deeply rooted. American health and social surveys have repeatedly shown that middle age often brings increasing stress, caregiving responsibilities, financial pressures, and major life transitions. During this period, unhealthy behaviors that once seemed small become permanent patterns. That's where the second warning sign appears. Never accept a man who refuses accountability. At first, this behavior can be difficult to see. Maybe every failed relationship was someone else's fault. Maybe every mistake comes with an excuse. Maybe every conflict somehow becomes your responsibility. The pattern seems minor. Until years pass. Then something interesting happens. Researchers studying long-term relationship satisfaction consistently find that accountability is one of the strongest predictors of trust. Without accountability, trust slowly collapses. Without trust, resentment grows. Without resentment being addressed, emotional distance becomes inevitable. But we're still missing an important piece of the puzzle, because something changes dramatically after age 70, and most people never see it coming. Scientists who study aging have documented a fascinating shift in priorities later in life. As people age, emotional well-being becomes increasingly important compared to status, achievement, or material success. In other words, peace matters more. Connection matters more. Time becomes more valuable. This shift reveals the third warning sign. Never accept a man who constantly creates chaos. Some people seem to carry drama wherever they go. Arguments appear out of nowhere. Conflicts never fully resolve. Crises become routine. At first, the excitement can feel like passion. But over time, the body pays a price. Research has linked chronic relationship stress to increased risks involving sleep quality, blood pressure, anxiety, and overall health outcomes. Millions of older Americans already manage health challenges. Adding constant emotional turmoil can amplify those burdens dramatically. Yet many people stay. Why? Because the consequences haven't fully appeared yet. That moment comes later. The breaking point. This is where hidden patterns suddenly become impossible to ignore. A retirement account shrinks unexpectedly. Friendships disappear. Family relationships become strained. Confidence drops. Health suffers. And that's often when the fourth warning sign becomes visible. Never accept a man who isolates you from others. Isolation rarely happens all at once. It begins subtly. A criticism about a friend, a complaint about family, a suggestion that others don't understand your relationship. Little by little, your support system becomes smaller. Researchers studying older adults have repeatedly identified social connection as one of the strongest factors associated with healthy aging. Strong relationships support emotional resilience. Isolation weakens it. The tragic part is that many people don't realize what's happening until their network has already shrunk. And that's exactly what makes this red flag so dangerous. But there is still one final behavior. And according to experts who study financial exploitation and emotional manipulation, this one often causes the most damage. Never accept a man who sees you as a resource instead of a partner. Think carefully about that. A healthy relationship involves mutual care, mutual respect, mutual support. But when someone becomes interested primarily in your money, your home, your social status, or your ability to meet their needs, the relationship changes completely. The warning signs can be surprisingly difficult to detect. Everything may appear normal at first. Then requests become demands. Generosity becomes expectation. Support becomes obligation. According to reports examining elder financial exploitation, across the United States, older adults lose billions of dollars annually to various forms of manipulation, abuse, and fraud. Many cases involve people the victim knows personally. That's what makes this issue so important. The fallout extends far beyond finances. Stress increases. Sleep declines. Mental health suffers. Independence can be threatened. Even physical health outcomes may worsen when emotional strain becomes chronic. Naturally, people try to fix these problems. Unfortunately, many seniors rely on advice that no longer works. Some believe they should simply be more forgiving. Others convince themselves that every relationship requires endless compromise. Some fear starting over and remain in unhealthy situations because being alone feels frightening. But old advice often ignores modern realities. Healthy relationships require boundaries. Healthy relationships require mutual respect. Healthy relationships require honesty. Without those foundations, problems rarely improve with time. In fact, they usually become stronger. So, what should you do today? First, pay attention to patterns instead of promises. Anyone can make promises. Consistent behavior reveals the truth. Second, maintain strong connections with trusted friends, family members, and advisors. Isolation creates vulnerability. Community creates protection. Third, trust evidence over emotion. If someone's actions repeatedly conflict with their words, believe the actions. And here's the warning. Research consistently shows that emotional manipulation often develops gradually. By the time it becomes obvious, significant damage may already have occurred. That's why awareness matters now, not later. But there's one question that deserves even more attention. What happens when online dating, social media, and digital communication make it easier than ever for people to hide their true intentions? Could the next generation of relationship risk look completely different from the ones previous generations faced? We'll explore that in our next video. If this discussion helped you see relationships from a new perspective, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring evidence-based insights to people navigating life after 60. And if you want to stay informed about the hidden factors affecting health, happiness, finances, and relationships in later life, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's coming next.